Onassis Foundation. Dublab.
Welcome to the Quarantine Tapes, a daily podcast from Onassis, LA and Dublab. Hosted by Paul Holdengraber, this series chronicles shifting paradigms in the era of social distancing.
Hello?
Hello, could I please speak with Toshi Reagon?
Yes, is it she?
Toshi, what a pleasure to speak to you. This is Paul Holdengraber calling you from the Quarantine Tapes. I'm so delighted you had time to fit us in and to speak with us. It's so wonderful. Thank you so much. Tell me, where do I find you at the present time? And differently put, how have you been living these last 3 months or so, your quarantine time?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York at my home in Crown Heights neighborhood. And how have I been for the last 3 months?
Right.
I would say we're pretty lucky. My health is good. The health of my family is good. I've been able to be creative and pretty much be Toshi during this time. My community is strong, and people are working together. And of course, grieving a lot of the losses that we've had over the last 3 months.
I imagine, knowing you a little bit, that this period has been anything but a period where you haven't been working. You probably have been working very much. And I'd love to know what some of the highlights are of these past 3 months in your work schedule.
Sure. Yeah, I have been working a lot, and I'm actually surprised by how active the creative community is, especially folks that are mostly into live art, switching to virtual platforms, and how exhaustive having, your life on Zoom and Google Meet and WhatsApp phone calls, not seeing people. Yeah, I really miss just going out to breakfast and talking for 3 hours. But yeah, I think one of the highlights was that we got permission from the Butler estate to show a workshop performance of our opera Octavia E. Butler's Parable of the Sower. But we showed a version of it that was very young in our process, and before we had sets or anything, we didn't even have a narrative, and we were able to show that and do it one time showing over 30 days. And we put them centered in different parts of the planet. So Abu Dhabi, Singapore, and then in the States, California, New York, Boston.
Can we see it now?
No, we only had 30 days to do it. And so it meant that, unlike most things that are happening on virtual platforms and then they just kind of live on YouTube or live somewhere, it meant that you had to create the audience every time. And you had to say, okay, it's happening at this time. And it was really special. It actually made for an incredible connection. It really brought people together. Thousands of people were able to witness it. And and it was meaningful.
Damn! I wish I had known. God. I mean, really. Anyway, such is life.
Such is life. But it was great to see the audience decide. There was a group of people who saw every single one and started to learn the show and started to learn the songs, and it was just special, and it felt close, when you connect with people in real time at an event. So that was really cool. And I guess the other cool thing that isn't necessarily work, but that how many of my friends and collaborators have made group to check in on each other and to, have some like cocktail hours with whatever you like to drink. How many people have called and just said, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? All of us are checking on each other and supporting each other during this time, which is really brilliant. I feel so good about that.
This pandemic has heightened certain moments, and in a conversation I had for the quarantine tapes earlier on, I spoke with Linnell George, and she remembers her last performance, and guess what it was? Her last performance was you at UCLA. With the parable of the sower, it is ingrained. She will never forget the date and the moment. What was your last performance, and how are you thinking about that last performance now in retrospect?
My last performance was the same one as hers. It will forever be ingrained. I mean, it was. I like, even when I just reflect on it, I get like goosebumps because it was, it was right as we're starting to actually get information around behavior.
Right.
And that we're starting to understand that how dangerous it is and that it's right on us now. But it was before we had like social distancing and it was before we had an understanding of droplets.
Right.
So, we rehearsed in February and we got to LA March 1st. I just remember, going to buy some like wipes like I always do to get on a plane because I've already been in a practice of like wiping my seats and everything.
Right.
And just how difficult it was. And I was like, what's going on? Like, and then the whole thing about toilet paper. And I was like, why are people doing that? I just wasn't quite woke. And then kind of right before our show, they had actually offered people to take, to get their a refund on their tickets if they didn't want to come to the show because of the information that was just starting to come out. But nobody was canceling anything yet. So we still had, I think only 3 people did that. And I know a few people just didn't show up, but we still had pretty close to our capacity, which was 1,800 people.
I know. At Royce Hall, I mean, Christy Edmonds has told me about that performance as a glorious, glorious moment. What date was it?
That was March 7th.
See, I knew you would know immediately.
Yeah, I know everything. It was March 7th. And it was so necessary and special and an incredible ritual of performance and congregation with all the people in the room, with all of the events that happened leading to it. And, hopefully when we can be together again, events that happened leading out of it.
Right.
But it was a special night. We were right on the edge of the turning point where it would not have happened, because right after the show, everything just started to get canceled and closed.
Right.
So that weekend, the last weekend that, that anything I think happened at Royce Hall, I think their season got canceled right after that.
That's right. And that very day is the reason I couldn't make it was that very day we had an event with Dublab and Henry Rollins and a number of other people. I interviewed Henry Rollins that evening. That was the last time people were here at the Onassis LA house. So I will never forget it either. Now, Parable of the Sower is a book that has mattered to you so much, and it mattered so much. Mm-hmm. It mattered so much also to your mother. She chose it for, as I recall, for Toni Morrison. What kind of conversations do you remember having with Toni Morrison about the book?
Well, with Toni Morrison, it really was that we were teaching a class at Princeton, so it was a semester-long class. And this is like 97, right. I think.
Right.
And so I think it's like it's more like not so much that I remember the specific conversations particular to Parable, but the whole idea was to kind of see the conditions in Parable and then see the conditions how they related to our lives, and experiences that we may have had in this country, and then put music that, you know, also spoke about those things. So if you wanted to look at like, and, you know, a disaster, like a weather disaster, then, you know, we just looked at the great flood of the Mississippi. And then there's just lots of songs around that you know, that flood. And so we would teach that, and also looking at the spirituals and how the spirituals, you know, really provide like a focal point of Black experience in America, and information, and spiritual guidance into like some of the worst situations that you can imagine. And then looking at blues and the eras of blues, especially looking at the migration, and all of that was kind of applicable music that really rode alongside of Octavia's story. And Toni Morrison is doing these Princeton ateliers. That's what the series is called. You know, always wanted a text. So we could have gone in and just started, you know, teaching people music.
Right.
But she was like, no, there needs to be a text. And I think like, you know, there was a performance, and Professor Morrison opened the performance with something like insanely brilliant that I have to listen to remember exactly what she said. But what I can remember, the feeling is that she tied together inside of this triangle of her, my mom, and Octavia Butler, like the universe.
Wow.
And like,
wow.
the universe. And it was, and she never said my mother's name, and she never said her own name, and she never said Octavia's name. But in that triangle was like, inside of it was the depth of knowingness and the depth of like belonging that kind of these three entities are good at, you know, exposing.
How beautiful!
And really good.
How beautiful!
Yeah,
how beautiful. If she were right here now, that is Toni Morrison, what would you want to ask her now about this moment?
I don't really have any questions for her. You know, I'm really lucky that I had a relationship with her, and it wasn't one of those like everyday relationships, but it was enough of a relationship that I really have a good feeling. I'm keeping Toni Morrison with me for the rest of my days, and hopefully even after.
You can channel something.
I just feel her very tangibly in my existence, and a lot of dead people. I just am like, there's no reason to give them up just because their bodies aren't here. Oh. You know, most of them have left an active, you know, representation of themselves on the planet. And Octavia has, and Toni Morrison has.
And your father. And your father.
My father is really a different category for me. My father is somebody that just has been a very complicated relationship, and my best relationship to him has been as a dead person. Yeah. And I know that's going to sound really weird to people, but
No. I think I can understand, I think.
Yeah. But he is definitely he's definitely in me. He's like, you know, I'm able to smile about him now, but he definitely is somebody, he just was such a fierce young person. That's like, he was so fierce and determined. And I mean, when I say young person, I'm talking like 13, 14, 15, 16. He really had it tough. And he really had to, like, you know, just get out there and, you know, start being an adult and a grown up. And he was activated inside of and during the Civil Rights Movement. And he was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And he had an incredible voice, singing voice. There's just nobody who has his voice. And he was an incredible song leader. And one of the things that I learned from him that I didn't even know I learned from him was, well, when I would watch my mom leading Sweet Honey, and my mother never had set lists. You know, she just started songs, and then that's what they would sing. And sometimes she said she could tell when like somebody didn't want to do a song, so she just pick another one. So when I started my bands, I started doing the same thing because it seemed really exciting. But apparently that came from my dad with the Freedom Singers. And my mom said, yeah, he would just start a song and it was exciting to them. And they just never got to settle in an expectation of what they were going to vocalize. It just always was really fresh and always hit the room with excitement. So I think that really sums up a lot of him energetically. You know, he's someone that learned to teach nonviolent strategy during the civil rights movement as a mode of freedom fighting. And it's one of the most important tools, very hard tools to learn because we are not nonviolent people, right? We had to learn how to do that.
Right.
And there's, you know, some discussion about like that being a weak position and everybody should hold up arms, but there's such a thing as knowing where you are and who you are fighting against and what is actually going to turn corners and what is actually just going to kill people. And I think those people knew that.
You know, you've said that we aren't in the time of the parable, but that we're in the time to stop the parable. I think it's an extraordinary statement, Toshi. And what do you think you might mean by that? And what might it mean right now, in a way, by talking about your father in the way you have? Perhaps you have already alluded to that, but perhaps you could further unpack that. Sure.
I mean, in the book takes place in 2024, and things are horrible. Like, you know, if you think it's bad now, like it's you know, I have to remind people that I just say to people, are you still getting in cars with strangers? You know, are you still getting food delivered to your door by somebody? Do you still have assurance that, like, you can, transport yourself in some kind of way from one place to another and not feel like you have to be with 20 people as you move? Do you still turn on your sink and water comes out? Like, things like that, you know, to really understand, like, the wealth of your living, which is not like, you know, Amazon, Jeff Bezos wealth, but wealth of, like, having some of the things that you need. And there are people on the planet right now that don't have any of that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have that. They don't have assurance about anything. For us, the ones of us that do, we can be the transformation into that not happening. And whenever we go into parable, people are so anxious to be in the time of parable. There's one way to think about it, which is like the time is happening all the time, right? Like that.
Right.
Your condition tomorrow is happening today. You know, if you are so anxious to, you know, kind of like name that particular thing, maybe you want to like ask yourself why. Like, why? What are you doing today that you are so sure is going to lead you to a devastating and horrific place that you may not and probably won't survive? And so that is like the thing, the look in the mirror that all of us have to take. And we have to, you know, make the hard decisions now, since we can actually see tomorrow. And if you can see it, like, you can make a decision if you want to go there or not. And you can do everything you can to ensure that that's not going to be your tomorrow. And it doesn't mean, right, that it'll be planet-wide or even, like, you know, statewide. But this collaboration between a pandemic and we cannot take it anymore, Black uprising, is a perfect example of stepping on the transportation of a horrific tomorrow. It is like, no, we're gonna step on it, and we're gonna stop it right here, and we're gonna draw a line. Here's a big fat line. We want you all to see it, and it's a non-negotiable line. And you are going to be on one side or the other of the line, but we are not allowing a tomorrow that we can see from today that is the same except for elevated and more horrific, we're not allowing that. So that's what's happening right now. And that's the point. Like, you don't embrace that horrible future. Step on it before it can happen.
I love the way you express that big fat line. You've said this whole gigantic white supremacist response is to some very big systemic change that we put into focus and that good people around the world have done. I'd love you to develop that a little bit. And do you see what's happening now, this overt resurgence of white supremacy as a backlash to what might be real positive change?
Yeah, I mean, this has happened before, and this has happened in countries all over the world. White supremacy cannot deal with something good happening. Like, it can't deal with equality. It can't deal with justice. It can't deal with, like, taking responsibility for its, right now and past activities. It can't say, I'm sorry. It can't give restitution. It can't give reparations. It can't return the money. It can't invest in wellness. It can't, it's aversion to all of those things that are necessary for humans, right? Humans need to be together. Humans need fresh water. Humans need clean air. Humans need access to good food. Humans need access to medicines and things like that when they don't feel good. Humans need shelter. Humans need to move freely throughout the world. Like, humans need all these things, and it makes good people. White supremacy says no, and again, no. And the only humans that can have access to this is first white men.
Right.
And that is just that's just the issue. And so, after centuries and centuries of, battlegrounds and negotiations, when you get to our country, I love looking at history and I love looking at time. And, what you're seeing is like a lot of, white men in power who have been in power for decades and decades and decades. You can trace them all back to segregation, resisting, something that the country actually has said that it wants, resisting peace, resisting equality, resisting an economic balance, resisting togetherness, and you see the trickle down of that hierarchical position everywhere. Like, so it doesn't matter if you're cool and you're, quote unquote liberal. It doesn't matter if your institution produced some black plays. It just doesn't matter.
Right.
Quote unquote. Everything.
Yeah, quote unquote. I mean, you've said that the way in which the country might be going and could be going, you say we all have the potential to be refugees in America, and that's very real.
Yeah, it really is, because the bottom line is, I don't know, Paul, you probably heard this before, but basically the idea goes that if something else outside of us would happen and we all have a common experience, that would make us have to be together to fight a common foe, like, it would be transformative to the human race, and we would all understand, like, oh, we're all beautiful, we're all here, and the planet's amazing, and we would somehow work our way to peace. And so here it is, like, pandemic, and that's just bullshit. Like, people have actually activated exactly from who they are, and so, like, the country, America, did not change. Like, the leadership, the political leadership in America did not change at all. In fact, they viciously saw it and see it as an opportunity to steal so many, faster and more, because people are, trying to stay alive.
Right.
And they contributed to the deaths of thousands of people. And this is actually, debatable to some folks. It's just well, no, that didn't really happen. And it's but yes, it did, and forget about the parties. let's just look at what people are deciding to do.
Right.
And people who are in positions of power and how they have decided to use that. Let's just look at like our communities and our neighbors, and let's just see who is actually trying to negotiate togetherness and wellness and generosity, and who is trying to murder people, and who is trying to scare people. And I would just say that like fear is the tool that's always been used by, white supremacy. Like it is the scariest fucking thing on the whole planet. It is the most destructive force, but it makes everybody else think that there is something worse than it. It's like we are a big, beautiful white house, and we just for this particular, but everything else out there is so scary and is coming to get you. Little black children, educated black people, the indigenous tribes of this land, people from other countries, even though we came from another country, it's so scary coming to get you. Like women, big in control of their bodies, so scary. What are they going to do? Like, it makes everybody seem like they're just monsters trying to like. It's not funny. What I love, and it's so wonderful that you said it's not funny, because I was just so taken, Toshi, by the fact that you were talking about these awful things, and yet there was humor in the way you delivered it, which of course is important because it also makes us feel that we can understand, and we need to move forward, and we need to move in a different direction. And the pandemic might be a portal. It might offer us an opportunity. Sadly, I wish we had much more time, and I know that you have been working a lot during these months and writing new songs, and for some time you've been writing new songs during this pandemic. I'm wondering, Toshi, and I'm putting you on the spot right now, might you leave us with a song? Oh, no, I can't do that. You can't. Okay. No, I can't. No, it's perfectly fine. I thought I would try my luck. I had the great pleasure and opportunity of hearing you sing spontaneously at the Underground Museum here in Los Angeles. Yeah. An experience. No, that was beautiful. An experience I will never forget. I mentioned to you at a moment that this moment might be a portal, and it might be a portal to bring in change. When people say we are going to go back to normal, that's about the last thing we want to do. So I'm wondering, when you think about a portal and a change, how do you imagine that change coming about? First, it's not one change. Everything is changing all the time, and people want a one epic change. And let's just forget about that. Consider your life as an opportunity for multiple changes that can lead you into a direction and that can create adaptability, so that you can face the things that are hard to face. And kindness is one of the hugest tools to activate as you're moving through hard times. And even if you can't access kindness, then to access not being violent. These are the things that will really help you be able to see the thousands of portals that are going to be opening up. They're opening up all the time. Change is happening all the time. So embrace your ability to adapt to an ever-changing world and universe, and embrace your tools and gifts of kindness. Embrace your tools and gifts of nonviolence. Embrace your tools and gifts of taking a second and looking at what's in front of you and not assuming that just because it comes in the body of a person different from you that they're out to get you. So embrace all of these Toshi, thank you so much. I think people hearing you say embrace, 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 embrace over and over again might just get a hint of what they need to do. Kindness instead of violence. I never tire to tell people that the word kindness means to be of kin.
And it's so important that we understand that. Toshi, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Stay well, stay safe, and I hope our paths cross soon again. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Paul.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
To support this show and Dublab's progressive programming, go to dublab.com/support.